Welcome to the Madwomxn Program. Firstly, Rendezvous with Madness would like to thank our co-presenters of this program, the Pleasure Dome and the CFMDC. Workman Arts would also like to acknowledge the Indigenous land on which we are presently located. Toronto includes the traditional territories of many nations, the Huron-Wendat, the Handus, the Anishinaabe, the Anishinaabe, and the Mississauga of New Credit. Workman Arts recognizes this is an ongoing dialogue, and we are grateful to live and work on this land with all people, those Indigenous to Turtle Island, and those from all over the world. Workman Arts values an inclusive, anti-oppression, and safe environment. Everyone has a role to play in maintaining this. Please see our website and ensure that you are treating others with respect. If you would like to ask a question, please type it into the chat box. The moderator will choose questions from the panel. We apologize in advance if we are not able to get to all your questions, as I'm sure they're great. We have an active listener, as we believe in talking about tough issues here at Rendezvous, and if you need to step off the call, please visit the program on our website for her contact information. Her name is Kat Singer. And I'm pleased to be joined by the panelists, Alexandra, Chloé, Eileen, Camille, and Kelisha. Sorry if I said any of your names wrong. And our moderator, Jennifer Poole. All right. Let's get started.
Thank you, Caitlin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel. I understand we've got about 45 minutes or so. Maybe we can have a little bit longer than that. And we have prepared some questions for all these artists to take up in their particular ways, and then we'll turn to questions in the chat. So I would just like to say to everyone that this is my first time being a moderator, and I'm coming to this as a viewer, as a learner, as an experiencer, and you've already taught me so much. You've activated things in me as a viewer and as a listener.
I think we're starting over.
Oh, we're starting over.
One moment. Oh, keep going. I'm so sorry. Keep going. Sorry.
Okay, we're not starting over. This is what happens when I guess you're a first-time moderator.
And we're non-for-profit.
So there we go. We're all humans here together, right, Caitlin?
Yes, of course.
So just to add also to Caitlin's land acknowledgement, I identify as a white first-generation settler here. And I'm very conscious of the two-row wampum and the other wampum belt covenants as I sit here in this dish with one spoon territory. So yeah, so I'm a learner, I'm a fan, and I've got some questions, and you know, you can take them up if and how you wish to, but let's dive right in. Are we ready? Are we ready for those? Yeah. Okay, so first question, and I was thinking this all the way through watching your work and interfacing with your work, was what brought you to this particular project? What brought you to this particular project? And whoever feels like they want to start.
I can start. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect, Eileen. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Eileen, and I did a hand-drawn animation called Panic Attack. And for a while, I've been doing hand-drawn animation about subjective states. And I was trying to figure out my new project. And I was sitting in the car, stuck in traffic, overwhelmed with anxiety and repetitive voices. And I suddenly thought, oh, well, this will be my new project. And I thought if I make a movie about it and all the anxiety that I'm having, that would be a way to sort of get the upper hand on the anxiety so that I could start to look forward to the voices. So while I was making the movie, when I would be stuck, like, fortunately, the voices would start up again and be like, oh, okay, let me take that anxiety and try to figure out a way to make it a little more funny or make it a little more this or that. So that was what brought me to Panic Attack, to do Panic Attack.
Thank you, Eileen. And as I was watching it, I did say, I wonder if Eileen lives inside me and is just recording things that are going on. So full disclosure to everyone, I have danced with the mental health system for many, many, many years. So I'm holding those voices in me too. Who else would like to take up that question? Like, what brought you to your project?
I can go ahead. I'm Alex. My pronouns are she, they. I created Better For Me. It's kind of a different project. It's something I haven't, never thought I was gonna make. It's a visual album, and I really think what brought me to it was just needing to do something different in terms of just like telling the stories I want to tell. I experienced like hospitalization, and I experienced a lot of mental health issues a few years ago, and I was looking for a story to tell that was very personal, but I didn't want to like literally write it out or create some sort of narrative for it. I felt there wasn't really a way I could tell it in the ways that I've been taught. So I decided to write songs for it instead, and that was a way to kind of just explore what I went through in a way that was a lot more kind of true to how I felt instead of like literally what happened. Because I was looking for a story to tell that was a lived experience and just something that I really knew. So yeah, that's kind of what brought me to that.
Thank you, Alex. Really appreciate that. Who else would like to take that up? Why this project? Why now?
Yeah, I could go next. So my name is Kelisha Daley. My pronouns are she, her, and my film is Where There's Room to Bloom. So basically, this short film I thought of when I was in my last year of theater school in September, and we had to come up with a live theater project, but because of the whole situation with COVID, I changed this entire script into a poetic film. But how I came about this film was I wanted to tell something really deep and personal, but kind of create a story with a universal lens. And I found within my own family, there's so much dysfunction. And it was like through having conversations with my sisters that we're all struggling with the same thing, though it looks different on the outside. So I wanted to tell a story of like, you know, generational trauma or knowledge or guidance, because I feel like everyone should take a peek into their own families. You know, the saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree is not just a saying. I think there's some truth in it. So I just wanted to investigate that more.
Yeah, I was thinking of my own family while I was watching your work. And Ella Fitzgerald all day, just saying, just all day Ella.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kelisha. Who else would like to take that up? Why this project now? What was your motivation?
I can try in English. So I made this film about my mother that I wanted to share her experience because she experienced undiagnosed bipolar disorder for years, and I realized that I never heard her side of the story, and I only saw it from my own point of view, and I needed to hear it from her in order to understand her better, to understand how she experienced it all those years, and it was a really intimate project, and I made it on my last year of master's degree in arts, and yeah, it's really personal, and about my family as well. So I'm not really fluent. It would be more fluent in French, but I hope you understood everything.
Merci beaucoup, Camille. Je comprends. And you're perfectly clear, and so please feel confident. Please feel comfortable.
Yeah, I guess I'm the last. So I'm Chloé Galibert-Laîné. I'm also French, and my pronouns are she, her. And thank you so much for having us and for engaging with our films. So as far as I'm concerned, my film was triggered by the experience of watching another film. So in that sense, it's a response as a spectator that I felt compelled to create, because I wanted to investigate my own emotional reactions when I was watching this feature film called The Pain of Others by Eileen, which is a film that really strongly impacted me, which is what I explore explicitly in the film. But then I can also mention that this film was also created as part of an academic project. I'm also a researcher in film studies, and so this piece was created as, I guess, both a film, but then also a work of research, a videographic analysis. That's how we would call that in academia. And I've been this was sort of what I had in mind originally, was to see how I could sort of manage to, at the same time, I guess, produce knowledge about this film and the workings of online media, I guess, is one of the themes of the film. But then I guess it also became a very, very personal piece as I kept exploring the topic, and I realized I had intimately a lot to unpack about what this film did to me when I first watched it.
It was a fascinating watch. Yeah. Thank you to you all. I'm also really interested in the modalities that you chose, because you all chose something very specific. There's animation, there's film, watching film, there's these beautiful floral arrangements in bloom, Kelisha, and music. And then Alex, you were using, it was a sensory delight in terms of like the music they were listening to and what we could see visually. And then Camille, you were using footage from home movies. So I'm really interested to hear you speak to, why did you decide to use the particular modality that you did, and what has been perhaps some of the reactions to that modality? So again, who would like to take that up?
I'll go. Shall I go? Hi. So I did hand-drawn animation for mine, and the reason I chose that is, one thing I wanted to explore was how fluid the differences between your perceptions of reality. Like, we can all look at objective reality, but then something could come into your mind that seems just as real and just as present. So I wanted to do hand-drawn animation to have very fluid transformations between the different states. The movie is all one shot. It's all one series of transforming drawings, because I wanted it to all seem, like it's one unified piece. So that's why I chose to do animation, to have it be seamless, going from reality to the subjective states. And as far as the reactions, I mean, I think there's been a variety of reactions. Like, when I went to the Carmel Film Festival, there were a whole bunch of women there that had suffered from panic attacks and had seen that the movie was going to be playing, and they all came up and they were all telling their stories, and that was really delightful to have everybody talking about their own issues. And then probably the worst response I had was a woman was really angry at me and said I shouldn't make fun of panic attacks because she had one and she had to go to the hospital. So she didn't think there was any humor in them, and that it was inappropriate to, have any humor when it came to panic attacks. So those would be the two kind of different responses.
Thank you, Eileen. Who else feels like they might want to take up that question? Like, why that modality for you, right, to get this message across?
Shall I go next? So we're not following the same order as the first question. Well, as far as I'm concerned, my film is made in a genre that we call desktop documentary. So it all takes place on the screen of my computer. And as far as the narration is concerned, you have my voice narrating the story. So it's a sort of research diary that follows my explorations into this film. And the film that I'm talking about is a film that was entirely made of footage found on YouTube. And so during my research process, I'm also researching YouTube as a way to access the original context where the images that composed the film were distributed. And I think because the theme of online media and how it works and how interfaces inform our emotional and intellectual and even bodily responses to media, that theme of online media was so important. I thought to show the interfaces in the film, so to embrace the desktop as the canvas of the film, was a very organic decision. That was a decision that I made really early on in the process of making the film. And in terms of the responses that I have received to the film, I've also had, I guess, contrasted reactions. For one thing, I think it really also depends, because I've had opportunities to show the work on a big screen, and now of course people are watching it at home on their computers. And because the story takes place on a computer, I think there is something very specific to this experience, because I've had viewers say that it was so uncanny to see my desktop onto their desktop and to feel like their computer was sort of possessed, because you see my mouse clicking on things and you can't interact with my desktop. But then I've also, I guess because the story that I'm telling, my research story is also a very personal story. I've also been receiving quite a lot of personal testimonies afterwards from people, especially women, but not only women, who would come either in public or in person after a screening and want to share their own experience watching my film, which was such an interesting way to sort of duplicate my process of talking about my spectatorial experiences. And I've also been told that because my film is so personal, it sort of forced them to empathize with the protagonists of the film. So they felt like they were awkwardly close to the protagonists, which was, I'm not sure if that was my intention, but it did lead to very intimate conversations, which I guess was part of what I was trying to achieve in making that piece.
Thank you, Chloe. And Camille, I see you waving.
Yeah, I will try in English. So I chose Super 8 and home movies because it's the subject of my master's thesis, ghost memories. So I tried to reconstruct my own story and my own relationship with my mother from footage shot by my father in the 80s. And I shot my own footage like 2 years ago. So I joined the two films. So I confronted the past vision of one person and my own vision of that same person, and gave her the possibility to express herself about her experience. So it's like a really personal way of telling I don't know, an intimate experience of mental health issue. And the rough, I don't know, brut,
Rough. Yeah.
rough testimony is, I think it's important to be heard in the public sphere, because people might relate to it, and it can allow some people to get out of isolation and feel connected to it. And because I know that mental health issues can lead to isolation, of feeling of struggle, and I thought that putting it in the public sphere like this, the testimony could create a sense of community and help people somehow. I don't know. So yeah.
Merci beaucoup, Camille. Thank you so much for that. And Kelisha, Alex, like, why this modality? And anything else you want to say about reactions?
Yeah, that's a really cool question. I feel like Better For Me really played with that a lot in both senses of like the actual music and the visuals, because it's half an animation and half like live footage that we figured out different ways of like distorting. So like there's like a lot of emphasis on distortion. When I was going through my hospitalization, it was because of psychosis, and that experience in itself is so disorienting, and it really creates a completely different world for you in my experience. So at the beginning of the film, there's a lot more animation, a lot more heavy effects that are happening, a lot more coded effects that are happening that are just like really distorting my image and the images that we created in animation to kind of just reflect, you know, literally just like a different world, a different state. And then a lot of the live footage towards the end is a lot more comforting, a lot more present, lots more different faces, like family, friends, and then just like beautiful people that I happened to be friends with for the last shoot, which was just really just interesting to do, because it was just different representations of, you know, like feeling whole towards the end. I could have prefaced that by saying, you know, there is kind of a journey that is happening in the film, and I feel like the modalities, the visual modalities that are happening really emphasize that journey. I don't think I could have told it without them. And then, yeah, just in terms of like how music is so present throughout it, we attempted to distort it as well. Lots of like heavy auto-tune, heavy bass, like just things that aren't normally, I don't know, not normally used in music that, you know, is trying to, I don't know how to explain it too well, I'm so sorry, but you know, I just think that the music is something that matches the visual cues throughout it that really use those technicalities or technical things that we change to portray the journey of it.
And what is the reaction then to doing this stunning visual album?
It's been really, really cool. Like, I feel like people really relate to the visuals a lot, and there's a lot that we put into the visuals to specifically, you know, have people see themselves inside of the work. Just in terms of, you know, like me representing Blackness in these visuals, me representing mental health in these visuals, and also just like such a personal stylized story that people are like, okay, wait, I can see some of that, some of this. Are you trying to say that? And it's just really interesting. I like when people try to break it down. But at the same time, because I made this film in academia, there was a response among my peers and my profs that were kind of like, why is it hip hop? Like, why do you need to, I don't know, there's just really it was just really, really analyzed specifically for the cultural things that were put into my piece, because it wasn't just on mental health or just on the technicalities or making an album. It was encompassing like a whole experience, and Blackness is at the face of that. So it was really interesting, like justifying certain decisions, but then when putting it into the world, like people were like, okay, I could just take this and this is an experience, and I can empathize with it and move on.
I find it fascinating. I totally relate to, and this is an experience, right? And then the academics were like, why? So yeah, I feel you. I sit in academia a lot. There's a lot of whys, and they're not very useful necessarily.
Yeah,
I'll just
exactly.
say that out loud. And so thank you, Alex, so much. Kelisha, why this modality? Tell us.
So with this style of this film, because this film is basically about self-discovery, I kind of wanted to capture self-discovery as like a trip. People usually tell me that my work looks psychedelic, but I didn't really notice it until looking back at this film. But I guess I kind of wanted the experience to be like time traveling. And especially because the original intention of this project as a play was supposed to be the main character traveling through women in her lineage and seeing the same experience happen over and over again. So I wanted like this style to be like you're traveling in the headspace of someone else and seeing different versions of the same person. And they may be versions that that person doesn't even know they have within them, or parts of themselves that they see way too often. So like I have the flowers and the music too, because I kind of, again, I wanted it to be a journey, and I feel like music is a really good accompaniment to accessing something that's deeper that you don't really get to access in a everyday conscious state. And yeah, I've been really into nature lately, and I feel like it's a great environment to kind of get aligned with yourself. And so yeah, that was the intention, was it to be really like natural, like the title says, where there is room to bloom, like to feel like you have space to kind of connect with yourself. So yeah, and then in terms of reaction, I'm not really good at remembering what people say, but a lot of people did like the outfits that I chose, which was really nice, and like the stylistic choices of I guess with the music. I don't know, I don't really remember, so I feel bad, but I think overall the reviews or the critiques have been great. I mean, it hasn't been out for that long, so maybe I'll be able to remember more. But yeah.
Thank you. Really appreciate all of that. Those thoughtful stories behind the stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why you make the decisions you make. So that brings me to our third question, and that's about language. So when I was first asked to think about moderating this panel on Madwomxn, I immediately thought to myself, I was like, I wonder how you folks connect or not with that term mad, right? It can be a pretty exclusive club. And in my journeys, there are times where it makes sense, and there's often times where it's inaccessible, especially depending on the body you live in and the access you have, right, to safety and privilege. And so, yeah, I'm wondering what you thought or you think about that term mad. Just going to put it out there. And we can start with Kelisha and Alex, perhaps, and just mix up the rota.
Oh yeah, I'll go. To me, the word mad, I don't really associate any sort of experience that I have in life with the word mad, because to me, there's like these negative connotations with it being that you're crazy or that you're insane. But I do feel that the journey of self-discovery can feel like you've gone mad, because like you're erasing and demolishing all these layers of like social conditioning and like even consciousness sometimes, and it can feel like being yourself is also being rebellious, and it seems like no one around you is willing to do the work, so it can at a lot of times feel like you've gone mad. And I feel like within the year of like making this film and writing this script, a lot of the times, like as an actor as well, I was immersing myself in other characters. So trying to find time to connect with myself for this piece, but then trying to connect to other people's experiences as an actress almost did feel like going mad. And it makes sense because like as a living human being, we're trying so hard to fit all of these different cultures and social groups. So it feels like we have, to me, it feels like sometimes I have no place. But I've learned that mad, I mean, if you take away the definition, it could be like cool, you know? It's almost like, I don't know if we're allowed to swear, but it's almost like saying, oh, that's the shit. Like, that's cool. Like, mad could be cool. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, great. I like that we started swearing. Thank you for that. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. For me, like mad has like two different meanings. On like a surface level, like the first time I kind of like was called like mad was just like by me literally just being angry as a Black woman, as somebody in like a lot of different like white spaces or just spaces where I was the minority. Like if something would happen and I was the only person in the room, or, you know, I looked at somebody else and be like, hey, did you notice this thing happen? Like somebody said something. Then if I call it out, then people will be like, oh, you're mad. Like you're just mad. And it's like this stereotype. And that's just like one thing, like just when you stand up for yourself or you advocate or you really like use your voice as somebody who has an emotional response, you're just labeled as like an angry person. And then later on growing up, when I had like, you know, started getting introduced to like mental health issues, and then finally like with this experience, it was like the other side where it's just like people not taking you seriously, or, you know, when you do ask for help, it's like your attitude is constantly analyzed, like as in like, is this person, you know, being serious, or do they really need help? It's like a constant questioning. And I think because like this project stems from an experience where like I was hospitalized, I did experience, you know, a different type of experience than a lot of other people would in a hospital as a Black woman. And that had people questioning my mental health, that had people questioning like, you know, like my treatment, you know, when I got out of the hospital differently than they would for somebody else. So it was just like, I feel like mad doesn't even necessarily like hold like those specific meanings to it. It's just like this constant like attempt to like prove yourself or prove what's going on or prove your experiences, is like always surrounding that like expression for me. So yeah, it's definitely like multifaceted when I think about that term and that word.
Really appreciate that thoughtfulness. So we have mad is the shit, which is what like mad activists and mad studies folks would say. I love that. And then mad gets weaponized, right? And mad isn't a big enough place to describe everything that can happen in there. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Kelisha. Okay, so if we're going the other way, Camille, do you have any thoughts on that word mad? Like, do you connect with that or not?
For me, it's I can only see, not only, but mainly see it like a word to use to mute women in general, like hysterical. And as you both said before, it's when we try to raise our voice as women or people from minorities, or we are called mad. So I only see the pejorative way, the side of the word, but in another way it can be positive, as you said before, Kelisha. Mad can be cool. It can be like a discovery. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to express really. Yeah, for me it's more like used to mute people in general. So
thank you, Camille. Chloé.
Yeah, I guess I can follow up because I mean, I guess Camille and I are not, native English speakers, and so for us, this question of language, I guess the words sort of sound a bit differently. At least I'm going to speak in my own name, not Camille. But I mean, it's interesting because I was thinking about the vocabulary that's used in my film, which is the vocabulary that's used in the footage that I use in my film. And there are native English speakers in the film, but no one uses the term mad. They talk about crazy a lot. And I don't think the word mad is ever evoked, neither in the film that I talk about nor in mine. And that's interesting because I think in French we have only one word for these two things, or maybe I can't think about it now, but we say fou or folle for a woman. But that means both. I mean, we translate crazy and mad into that one term. But it's really interesting for me to think about the difference that can be heard in English between these two terms, because it seems to me that in all the footage that I engaged with for making my film, it seemed to me like, as Camille said, the word crazy was always used to dismiss the women who were daring to speak out. Like, yeah, don't pay attention to them, they're crazy, right? They're sort of making up this illness that they think they have, and actually they're just nuts, I guess, to use it, that nuts being the title of another film of Penny Lane, the filmmaker who made the film that I respond to. But as I think Alex, you said that it's really interesting that in English the term mad also means angry, because as someone who's been socially constructed as a woman, I feel like that's the expression that I have not been given access to. That's the one that I can't make happen. And I feel like I feel crazy very often, and I don't know if I ever feel mad, and I feel like that has the potential to perhaps have more power, or that can be embraced a bit more positively, as both Alex and Kelisha also said, that in madness, because it has this I guess association with anger and with affirmation, there is something more, I don't know how to say that, there's more potential for explosion than crazy, that to me sounds really, as Camille said, as a way to mute people in general and women in particular.
I was wondering how it was going to, the language would feel, right, when asking that question, and what are the translations or the interpretations, right, of the stance that is mad, which could be different or similar to foo, right? Thank you for that really thoughtful response. And we'll go over to Eileen now. What do you think about that term mad? How do you connect to it?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because it is so multifaceted. And as I was thinking about this topic, it made me think that madness to me kind of means you don't have a shared reality. Everybody can say, oh, you're mad. You don't see things the way I do. And it's a way of isolating people, and it's a way of feeling isolated as being mad, or even if you could look and say, oh, the politics are madness. It's like, I don't understand it. It's a different kind of reality. So I think what's interesting, if we're all making movies that are intersecting with the idea of madness, is somehow turning it into a shared reality. So like one thing I like to do with making movies about subjective states, which are very personal and are kind of isolated, is you find like the universal thing that's going on, and then other people can relate to it. And in a way, once you make the movie about one of these subjective mad states, it kind of is no longer mad because other people are also perceiving it. So it's no longer like this isolated, like now it's a shared reality instead of like just yours. Because when I was thinking about it, it seems like when somebody's mad, it's like they're perceiving a world that nobody else is, right? I mean, like that's to me when I was trying to figure out what it meant. So that's
Thank you, Eileen. We have a question from Caitlin that I'm going to now move to. So I'll read it here. How do you balance using your creativity to express yourself while discussing topics that are consciousness raising, right? So there's how do you balance expressing yourself and raising consciousness? And do you feel a responsibility as an artist to also be an activist? So who feels so inclined to take up that particular question?
I can go ahead. I think that's a great question because I personally like view art as political, like inherently political. So you know, in order to be an activist, you have to do something. You have to do an act that is for your cause or whatever cause it might be, and to kind of advocate. And when you advocate for yourself, and you do that through art, through expression, through wanting to express how you feel, inherently you are kind of like being, you are doing like the act of an activist. You are expressing, you are telling or showing something that matters to you, or something that's a cause inside of you. So when you connect it to things that are like your own marginalized experiences, sometimes inherently, even if you don't necessarily want to be an activist, the art that you create is activating, and it does like bolden your ideas and helps people like understand their ideas and like what they want to say or feel about these subjects. Because I know like even in this generation, like pretty much all information is digital, and everything that you learn is like through TV shows, movies, or like even like movies, like just short films on the internet, that could even be just like funny jokes that people just illustrate through like literally just making a film or a video. So those things can activate or inspire other people inherently. And I think, sometimes you can take it to the level of being like very political, being an activist, and then other times, just making the art itself can be an act in itself.
Yeah.
Chloé, go ahead.
Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting and an important question, and I don't know, these days it seems like there are so many battles that need to be fought at once, and I guess one sort of, I mean, it's easy to feel conflicted about, I guess, what is the most urgent to address, or at least that's definitely something that's on my mind. But just reading the question again, because we see it in the chat on our screens. I find the expression, consciousness raising really interesting, because it just makes me wonder about consciousness. Like, what is it exactly that we do when we try to raise consciousness? It's not like sharing knowledge, it's about consciousness and what does that actually mean? And I don't know, I just wanted to follow up with what Eileen was saying, just as an answer to the earlier question that really resonated also with me, and I guess what I'm trying to do, because Eileen, you were talking about, sorry if I'm sort of twisting your words or appropriating them, or I guess just responding, but I mean, you were talking about the importance of creating this common view, at least during the duration of the film, so we can at least agree on what was on the screen, and then that sort of becomes a shared ground from which we can then sort of discuss our different realities. And I guess for me in my own work, that's sort of where I see the how do you say, the creativity, or like the intimate becoming political. I guess for me it is about this research of what is universal in whatever phenomenon I'm trying to understand. And I think if I want to understand it, I need to understand it like within myself first. But then I think to create these spaces where those intimate topics can be discussed publicly, this is where something political, in the sense of something, you know, that creates common, can happen, or at least that's the hope, I guess, that I have, or maybe we have, in creating these sort of works.
Anyone else want to respond or add to that in terms of relationship between art and activism?
Yeah, I also agree a lot with what the other filmmakers are saying. I also believe that just by, like, obviously I feel a need to want to share what I think about the world with everyone else and get everyone else's eyes open to something that's beyond their own immediate surroundings. But I feel like the more that I just tap into like my own authenticity is like, I'm already succeeding in the responsibility of being an artist, because being an artist is, to me, is like being human. It's just fully expressing yourself whenever, however, you know. And I feel like the more I take the freedom to do that, it's like giving everyone else an invitation to do the same thing. So then it, in a way, it creates like a chain reaction for everyone to now like consciously raise their awareness, because I mean, it's been ignited, the flame is going, and people, I guess it's like with the whole placing a subject on film and making it become universal, I think just by saying, hey, I'm going to do this, I feel like it's impossible not for it not to be felt or like also comprehended by other human beings. Like, there's so many people, like, we've lived thousands of years, and even going back to the discussion of like madness, like, we've all felt like we weren't ourselves. And just by, you know, they say that being yourself is an act of rebellion. So just by being yourself is allowing everyone else to be themselves as well. I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, yes to that.
That really spoke to me, Kelisha, because watching all of your work, that's immediately, I got activated, right? And I wanted to go and express. And I'm often trapped in the written word, which it can never do what you need it to do, right? So thank you for saying that out loud. Does anyone else want to take up that question? We do have another question from the floor, the virtual floor. So I've got another one to pose to you, but does anyone want to take up the conversation around activism and art? Okay, I'm going to ask this other question then. So here goes. These films are so very personal. What advice would you give anyone wanting to tell a very personal part of their story through film when they're nervous about being that vulnerable in public, or being criticized or seen differently? So what advice would you give about how to tell deeply personal stories in the way that you do? And I see Eileen's hand.
Well, I guess this kind of goes back to what we were saying before, you guys were saying before, about when you do tell something very personal, it is the most universal. So I think that you guys have been touching on that. So I think that a really personal story does affect people universally, because we are all human beings. So that, I mean, that's one thing I would say, you know.
Anyone want to lean into that? Any words of advice for others on how to tell such a deeply personal story?
Yeah, I can share an anecdote, because I'm I mean, I was trained as a researcher, as an academic, so being personal and vulnerable in public was definitely not part of what I was supposed to be doing. And then it so happened that one day I made a very personal film, which is not the one you saw, but like an early one. And the only reason why I could make that was because I did not intend it to be a public film. I made it as a video letter that I was addressing to someone with whom I felt very close and very safe. And so I don't know if that's a very practical advice. Like, I'm not saying your film should be a letter, literally, though it was the case in my situation. But I think it really helped, and I'm still doing this a lot to sort of address my film, whether it's, you know, written words that will end up in the film or just thinking about the images and the sounds that make the film as something that is made for someone to whom I really want to share that thing with, because I think then it leads to, you know, the creation of a situation where at the same time you can be very authentic, and then also you feel like you won't be attacked. Then perhaps eventually you will be, but then the film will be done at least, and then you can learn how to, you know, have a shield to be prepared for conversations. And then it's an entirely different question, but at least the film is what it needs to be.
Thank you, Chloe.
Yeah, my advice to the person, the individual asking that would be, if you want to make the film and be very vulnerable or share a personal story, but you feel like you'll be judged, if you don't do it, you're being in disservice to yourself. Because, I mean, we all see the very cliche movies, and it's because they're the same voices that are being expressed over and over again. So if this person or whoever decides they want to make a film but doesn't want to based on the feeling of vulnerability, I feel like that's just all the more reason to tell the story, because I feel like a lot of our voices and everyone's voices hold so much weight, and that if we don't think that we can take up space, then again, with chain reactions, everyone else is going to feel the same way. So you kind of just have to be like courageous and know that you're doing it for yourself, which means you're doing it for everyone else as well.
Thank you, Kelisha. Alex or Camille, is there anything you want to speak to there?
I don't know if it's an advice, but yeah, it's gonna touch someone in a way, and if you're honest and you need to share your story, it's gonna resonate to someone else, and it's gonna be a success. I don't know. And it's difficult to be vulnerable, to expose yourself, but you can speak to someone else, and that's the real point of sharing personal stories. And judgment is not really, yeah, it's quite difficult to face it, but the people you can touch is more important above everything else. I don't know. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Camille.
And I wanted to say something, you know, just do it when you're ready. Also, you know, like, tell that story when you're in a place to actually be able to tell it, because sometimes you can articulate the things you just dealt with or the things that you've gone through without, you know, maybe like re-traumatizing yourself, or without, you know, having a healthy relationship with what happened to you or with your past and things like that, or not. You know, sometimes you don't have that healthy relationship and you need to say it and you have to say it. So it's like really about like timing too, because I don't know, it's sad when you lose a story because you're too afraid to say it and you miss that, you know, that inspiration, that passion to actually tell it, and then versus, you know, being thrown in, being like, I have to tell something that, you know, has to, that is like a lived experience. You know, you speak from your own voice, speak from your experiences when you create art, but at the same time, you know, be ready to take that on. Because I know there was a person that was making a documentary about, you know, something that was like very personal, but also very traumatizing, and it had to do with like their past and, you know, like literally what happened in terms of like literal slavery. And it's like those things you have to treat so differently, and you have to treat yourself with so much compassion when telling those stories, because, you know, you can only take on so much, and you have to be ready to do that.
Thank you to you all from the virtual floor for those responses. So our very talented organizers are telling me that we're almost at time, but I did want to put it to all of you, if you have any questions for each other, if you watched each other's pieces and thought, I wonder ... So I wonder if you have any questions for each other.
I just want to say, Kelisha, your aesthetics, fantastic. I had a chance to take a look at your work, and honestly, just beautiful. I just aesthetically really appreciated it.
Oh, thank you so much. I love hearing that. Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak back to each other? Words of love and encouragement and support or curiosity?
No, I'm actually curious, because we just talked about telling very personal stories, and I couldn't agree more with what you just said, Alex, about also the importance of, you know, waiting for the right time to tell the right stories for oneself, I mean. And so that sort of makes me wonder, I mean, it's a very generic question of like, what are you working on now? But I guess my way of asking the question is like, are you like continuing to explore, like, you know, family stories, or digging, you know, more into, or do you feel, because that's sort of where I feel at the moment also, I feel exhausted from sort of digging inside my own self and sort of wanting to explore things that are outside of me. So I guess that would be my question for all of you, like, how do you position yourself in relationship to yourself in your next, or what you're, you know, whatever you're currently working on or thinking about working on next?
Yeah, that's actually a question I had for everyone else. I'm like, after this discussion, hearing all of your words and thoughts, I'm like very intrigued about what everyone has going on next. But to answer that, I feel like I am too, very drained, and almost like, you know, you feel like you're doing something greater, so you keep pulling away from yourself, but then you're also depleting your own like cup. And I feel like I have to take some like personal time to like kind of fill myself back up again. And like, I made this project, this film, but now I have to live. So like, you know, they say that you need to live in order to like continue creating. I feel like I need to live more in order to just like tell my next story. And luckily, as an artist, we're so adaptable that I could just sit filmmaking down for a little bit and pick up another medium, which is really exciting. So I'm just hoping to tell other people's stories. I'm very, very inquisitive about other human beings. So that's why I love listening to everyone. So I'm interested, or I'm looking forward to telling other people's stories as like an actor, and just like being on the other side of that table, basically. Yeah.
Thank you, Kelisha. I'm now just looking at the time, and I'm wondering if they're going to actually turn us off. But maybe, Caitlin, you can answer that question. Are we going to get turned off now?
Sorry, I was muted for a second. I don't know if they'll shut us off like cable TV, but we should wrap it up.
Okay.
This is such a beautiful, lovely conversation, and I want to thank you guys for being so generous with one another and with your answers. And I want to thank our lovely moderator, Jen, for swooping in and helping Workman Arts and really putting some thought into her questions. I'm just blown away. And once again, I want to thank our co-presenters. So that's the Pleasure Dome and CFMDC, and that's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone, from me too. Please take very good care of your precious selves and those who are precious to you.
Bye.